Okay, day 275. This is part one. Somebody sent me this nice shirt, asked me about Tony Podesta, asked me about artwork, asked me about jewelry. Joulry, jewelry, asked me about that. Asked me about selling Russia by the pound. I can get you anything from Russia. Matter of fact, I've been doing that since, well, 1992, and before that, Mark Rich was doing it in 1989. And this is a subject that I happen to have a lot of experience with because I was there in person looking at some of the same bids that Mr. Podesta was looking at during all those years ago, but we won't go into that right now. We will say, though, let's take stock of where we are. Well, we have the CNN BuzzFeed version of the world events, which is the PP dossier in Moscow. This is the Russia story they want to tell you. The two prostitutes peed on Trump or peed on his bed. BuzzFeed broke that riveting story. Newsfeed validated it with CNN validated that with 12 different people, all experts in the intelligence field, all verifying what a great report it was. That's one world. Let's look at what they have lately. So that was Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS is a political operative firm, opposition research firm, whatever you want to call it, in DC. That's their first gem. That's their first jewel. That's their first Tony Podesta jewel. Their second jewel, or their latest jewel, is we hired this driver from the New York Times to drive around for a year to have the sexton, he gets a ton of sex, to have Vesel Netskaya try to seduce Donald Trump for a year. Finally, she gets a 20-minute meeting. She goes in there with her bodyguard, which is a retread KGB guy. We'll use the AK-47, symbol here, Akhmetshin. She goes in with Akhmetshin and Vitselnitskaya. These are the Fusion GPS top of the class here. After a year, they get a 20-minute meeting. And what does she do? She says, we need to reinstate child trafficking. Our adoption agency in Strongsville, Ohio isn't doing so well. The European adoption consultants or whatever it is, they're about ready to get raided by the FBI for child trafficking. So we really need to reinstate them. So that was last year. Okay. So now we talked about who they worked for, which is a Russian oligarch. And he was a guy named Katsev, and he was the guy who was the son of the transportation minister of Russia. He became a billionaire at 27, all this stuff, and he got involved in this child trafficking. This is the BuzzFeed CNN narrative. Whatever Fusion GPS happens to come up with, and really it's Mike Kempner over at MWW, but anyway, let's call it Fusion GPS. That's what you are led to believe. Okay, now let's look at a guy who won a Pulitzer Prize at the age of 29, Mr. Rago, who recently was killed in, well, we don't know actually. We don't know what actually killed him. We're waiting for the autopsy, but he just recently expired. And let's look what he was working on. He was working on the story I've been talking about, which is selling Russia by the pound. This is the paperclip. We're not only going to sell the programmers, we're not only going to sell the intellectual capital through Mikhail Alperovich. We're going to bring over those Russian hackers. We're going to bring over those Russian Vault 7 hacking tools. But we're also going to plunder, which is fine. We won the war. We won the Cold War. We're going to plunder all the mineral assets, right? And we're going to plunder the girls. Those are the two biggies. They're waiting to be plundered. Okay. So we need somebody like Katsev, right, to work with us to basically submit these rigged bids to buy these huge nickel and cadmium and palladium mines, gold mines, uranium mines, all this sort of thing. Who's that going to be? Well, it couldn't be a better name. Couldn't be a better name, because if you're trying to broker off Russia in that way, by brokering it off through these fixed rigged bids, with the bid rigging, you broker things off. Fortunately, his name is Prokhorov. We got Prokhorov. We got Tony Podesta working with Prokhorov. And who is Prokhorov? Who is Mikhail Prokhorov? Well, he's 27, comes from Siberia, the youngest of 8 kids, dirt poor growing up. CIA loves that story. And anyway, his parents are both die in their late 50s. So he's kind of, you know, living by himself. I don't know who killed his parents, but anyway, it seems like somebody's putting some pressure on him. And he becomes at 27 a billionaire, owning a nickel mine, a palladium mine, used in a lot of exotic weapons and different things. And he ends up owning a gold mine and becomes a billionaire as well. Way bigger billionaire than Mr. Catsift, you know, sifting those cats. So Mr. Prokhorov ends up being used to broker off all of the assets of the ex-Soviet Union. So much so that by the time 1999 rolls around, the system of selling off the girls and selling off the minerals and selling weapons to Nazi-type splinter units is so well developed that it's just almost a cookie cutter by the time Madeleine Albright and Hillary Clinton come along for Kosovo. And that the only thing that Madeleine Albright adds and Hillary adds to Kosovo is the organ harvesting. So you can see this 10-year collapse of the Soviet Union, selling and Prokhorov brokering off the Soviet Union. He was a member of the Communist Party after all, right? Is just repeated in Kosovo, and it's repeated in Haiti, repeated in Syria, repeated in Libya, repeated in Turkey. Not so much Turkey, but Turkey's used as a funnel point and a transshipment point. So what happened to Prokhorov? Well, you're nothing without a bank. Remember Al Capone, his big regret was he didn't have a bank. So it turns out they do have a bank. Tony has a bank. It's going to be SBER Bank in Russia. It's the largest bank, but you kind of pronounce it like a P, so think of it like a spur bank, almost like a sperm bank. And that probably might be appropriate when you're brokering off Russia and using your women to brownstone different people, like he did in Paris and different conferences that he would go to trying to sell his assets. So this is Mr. Prokhorov, kind of a, I'm not going to say high-class pimp. Well, okay, high-class pimp. So what happens to Mr. Prokhorov? Well, he becomes the first NBA owner in the United States that's not a U.S. citizen. The New Jersey Nets, which he later changes the name because of SEIU pride, changes it to the Brooklyn Nets. Well, that's where we're going right now. We're going to see it, and we're going to see his Barclays Center that he owns 45% of, and we're going to just see who his tenants are. We're going to see if his tenants are anybody in the Justice Department or anybody in any political parties. It's going to be called Cadman Square. It's going to be a square a lot like this. A lot like this. So that's where we're going right now. Let's say hi to Tony. Any DU and white phosphorus, Tony, for us? Anything? And always remember, you're under the watchful eye of the Clockwork Orange. We'll see you all in Brooklyn.